We're live. But are we ready? Who knows? Welcome to Hellfire Agency. Everything that you're going to hear today is either the opinion of myself or somebody else. None of it directly reflects on the Church of Korihor, which is just the institution that encourages us to use critical thinking. So let's always keep that in mind, because we're about to get into this subject. There's this guy, Nick Shirley, that everybody's been talking about lately because he got retweeted by J.D. Vance and by Elon Musk, a couple other people, for supposedly exposing $100 million worth of fraud in the state of Minnesota with this video. And it's just not quite as simple as that. In fact, it's pretty misleading. I wasn't going to even talk about this. I heard it said. There's probably some truth, probably some non-truth. And, we probably will never know the entire depth of it. And I said, but boy, it sure does sound pretty racist. Couldn't prove it because I didn't know. Then, all of a sudden, Greg Mattson at Quick Media, before him, the Paul brothers over at formerly the Stick of Joseph, now Latter Daily Saints. I don't know if the Stick of Joseph still exists in some form. If you don't know who these people are, Mormon YouTubers started lauding the praise upon this YouTuber, Nick Shirley, as being not at all racist. Whenever somebody defends you, promotes you, first of all, saying, okay, first of all, this guy is not racist. You should be prepared to hear some pretty racist stuff, right? And definitely a great investigative journalist, better than any investigative journalist who has things like degrees or experience or legacy media behind him. You don't need these things to be an investigative journalist, and this guy actually shows it because he's gone out and done all this gumshoe homework on exposing how Somalis are ruining America. And it turns out it's not only more complicated than that, it's racist. And the defense of it is frankly racist. I'm calling it out. I don't mean these guys any harm. And let us always remember, you don't have to know you're being a white supremacist to be a white supremacist. That's partially why it's such a dangerous thing. But we like to have some fun when we get started into some heavy subjects. So here we go.
Blacked out.
Why is this having...
Whoa, start from the beginning. Forget you saw that.
There's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday. If you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out.
Why is this having to be done by a 23-year-old return missionary?
Dues vote, God's kingdom will be secured. Jesus Christ gives us freedom.
A video that on X has over 100 million views.
And 2.5 million last year. We're just wondering where the kids are.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going.
I believe this is just shortly, very shortly, after he got back from his mission to Chile, he starts checking out the border.
Behind me, we have hundreds of immigrants that are coming to the country.
And like I said, they literally spelled the word wrong on their sign.
Stop, it says Quality Learing Center. Don't you know what Learing is?
The idea of white supremacy.
So it sounds to me, Nick, that Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
Yeah, Tim wants votes. There are entire apartment complexes where white people have been pushed out of these apartment complexes because Somalians have taken over and they're inside of these towns like Minneapolis where they can go get votes from these people. And if you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this stuff happen and because you're going to call a white person racist for calling out facts, this is what's going to happen to a state like Minnesota.
I am the captain now.
Somalia sucks as a country. It just does. There is a prevailing culture that makes it so these countries are filled with violence, poverty, incest, and abuse. And all of these countries have a common theme that they are run by Islamic dictators.
I just want to stay safe, and I know they won't get close to hogs.
And what do you think about the Islamification of Texas here?
It's really sad, and if I can fight, if I have to pick up a gun or whatever to fight to keep Texas free from Muslims and their ideology, I will go and fight for my state.
And what fears you most about Muslims?
The fact that women will lose their freedoms, and our children will not be able to do what we like to do, and the men marrying little girls.
And I was just talking to some Muslims over there. They seem like pretty nice people. Have you ever talked to Muslims?
Well, even the devil was very nice.
God bless you, Nick Shirley, for taking that upon you. And you're doing some great work, it looks like.
Big top goes up, preacher works the street. Come find Jesus at the meet and greet. Sell you heaven, then shake you from their feet. They'll raise the dead, they'll cure your gout. Pass the plate, take a pass on down, 'cause charlatans never change. Soothsaying in that holy name, fools burnt in holy flame. Oh, charlatans never change.
Now, come on. Tell me you don't love that. I am Exmo Joe, alias Joe Rollins, first herald of the Church of Korihor, but that's only mainly on Sundays. I did a little bit of sermonizing up in the mountains here in St. George this morning. Hope those of you who follow me on TikTok at Hellfire Agency will go and take a look. I did a pretty good little 10-minute sermon about church. But we're here to talk about Mormons. These Mormons have been trying to reach you about your extended warranty on white supremacy, and you're going to miss out on an amazing opportunity if you don't re-up right away. I want to show you a little bit. So you probably by now have seen this clip, this 42-minute video. I have about 20 minutes worth of all kinds of videos to show you, but I wanted to kind of clue you in on the deeper story. So if you haven't seen it, well, try to be patient with us. We'll catch up with clips of it. And of course, always go to @Nick Shirley on YouTube. I'll put his name up here. I try to remember it. The only way I can remember it is to go, Shirley, you're not serious. That's for people. Don't worry about it. All right, let's watch a little video, shall we? Yeah, there we go. All right.
Back into his Instagram account. This is in December of 2023, so 2 years ago. I believe, could be wrong here, but I believe this is just shortly, very shortly, after he got back from his mission to Chile. He starts checking out the border, the U.S. border with Mexico. Let's go over a couple of things here that he does.
Behind me, we have hundreds of immigrants that are coming to the country. I'm here by myself at the U.S. border with Mexico, and behind me, we have hundreds of immigrants that are coming to the country right as you are watching this video.
Tenemos que aprender.
Sí, hay que aprender.
Hey.
Y ahora, ¿qué le gustaría compartir al mundo?
Que lo intenten, que el que no lo intenta, pues.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a quick reference. When you see this Greg Mattson at Quick Media, I mean you no harm. Nobody put on Greg Mattson anything that is the opinion of Nick Shirley. I'm just pointing some things out here. And frankly, I would have put more of Greg in here, but it's kind of boring. And I don't like him. No offense. I don't think you like me either. Frankly, I don't think you know who I am. But Greg Mattson, if you don't know, he represents Go and Do Travel. Do a little Google search before you book with them, but whatever. Lots of Mormons go and book on these tours where it'll take you all around. And part of his promotion for his for this travel company, I don't know what kind of stake he has in it, other than that he's an authorized spokesperson for it. Is he runs this show where he talks about subjects that are important to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the adjacent Mormon community. So why is he talking about this video about Nick Shirley? As you can tell, he is very proud to show that Nick Shirley, who was a YouTuber before he was a missionary, decided to shut down his YouTube channel for 2 years, go serve in Chile for 2 years, and then come back, and then came back and started doing more YouTube content. He's an influencer, no problem with that. The issue is that before he was a missionary for the Mormon Church, Nick was not really particularly political. It seems most of his content was mostly geared around subjects like how he apparently snuck into Jake Paul's wedding or something, little stunts, typical YouTuber stuff. And then he comes back from his mission. He speaks Spanish, as you can see. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that Nick, obviously, he does these man on the street style interviews mainly about immigrants. And that, as far as I can tell, having gone through quite a bit of his content, and not particularly favorable towards immigrants. Okay, you can be against open borders, you can be against immigration even, and not be racist or white supremacist. But it's gonna be, there's a little, there's gonna have to be some nuance accounted for here, right? And so he goes up and he interviews these immigrants, and they tell him, he asks them, he's like, what do you want people at home to know? And here these people are, they're not running away, they're not hiding. They're not hiding their faces in shame or anything. They tell him that we came from a bad situation, that in our country they're killing us, that in our country it's hard to find work. These are the things they're saying while Greg's talking over them. I don't think he's doing it on purpose. Greg, I said I don't think you're doing it on purpose.
Spanish in Chile.
Tenemos el país con mucha violencia, tenemos el país con mucha violencia, muchas matazones, nos han querido hacer.
Giving reasons why they're coming.
En nuestro país para que nos echen la mano acá, a ver si nos ayuda.
After King Benjamin goes.
Okay, so and then I'm going to cut straight over to these guys are Jake and Hayden. I'm sorry, Hayden. I have notes. I'm old, guys. Hayden and Jackson Paul. You're welcome. These guys, their channel, I just want to make sure I get this right, is at Latter Daily Saints. Why you guys gotta make why you gotta make it so similar? I miscapitalized, but that's it. It'll get you there. Now every time I read this out, I have to not say Latter Daily Digest. Who are my friends? Latter Daily Saints. We could be friends. I don't usually build bridges across the divide, but I'm not against it. But they're going to be part of this, also making this rhetoric for why Nick, Shirley, you're not serious. It represents the best of Mormon media content providers, and definitely is not racist, unless he is. They actually do a better job about covering their butt, about basically, these guys have all been burned by Tim Ballard before. Did you notice the title of this? I said, basically, these guys, they got themselves a new Tim Ballard. Tim Ballard, as we all know, once upon a time, told everybody on that he was going out there putting an end to child trafficking. And it turns out he was full of crap. And some of us have been calling him out for years on it. I started out in this whole thing. I didn't do podcasts before I blew up on TikTok and got a whole bunch of people following me about this Tim Ballard secret whiteboard meeting, in which I talk about, do you not know about the Tim Ballard secret whiteboard meeting? And then I would just green screen in the Tim Ballard secret whiteboard behind me and talk about this organization is Children Need Families, and this organization is blah, and this organization is that. And look at the big plot here. And so I did my whole conspiracy theory thing. And I didn't do any of this kind of content, except that all of a sudden people started saying to me, I really need longer form content about the Tim Ballard secret whiteboard meeting, because I could only, back in those days, I could only do about 3 minutes at a time. Transitioned from there over to doing Ted Bundy content, mainly because I lived down the road from Ted Bundy's cave, which is not real. Well, it was a real thing, but anyway, it wasn't Ted Bundy's cave. But I started doing Ted Bundy content because that actually has a personal connection to me, and blah, 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 blah. That's how I got into the whole true crime thing. And honestly, I've many times thought, I'm just going to quit doing this. I'm going to quit doing this. I go down these rabbit holes. I get all pissed off and things like this. But this is, well, here I am. I can't seem to stop. So let's keep going. So let's talk about why we're talking about Nick Shirley.
and sends his servants out to see what the people have thought of his teaching. It says in verse 2 here of Mosiah chapter 5, it says, "And they all cried with one voice, saying, Yea, we believe all the words which thou hast spoken unto us, and also we know of their surety and truth, because of the Spirit of the Lord omnipotent, which hath wrought a mighty change in us, or in our hearts, that we have no more disposition to do evil, but to do good continually." And so I say that because his content after his mission has changed drastically and has moved from this like super crazy bombastic type pranks that are a little rowdy to doing some investigative journalism that is uncovering some really important things to be talked about. A video that on X has over 100 million views. It's a 42-minute video exposing.
Okay, so we're blending some things here together, trying to fast forward to where we're actually talking about this video and why it's not what Nick Shirley is presenting it to be. But so that we get caught up here, this is why all of a sudden the Mormon media, the bloggernacle as it may be sometimes called, used to be back in the blogging days, caught wind of that. Oh, this guy is a returned missionary, just recently returned, and he's one of our best and brightest. The reason why it's particularly of note to me is that the Mormon Church actually just promoted a huge outdoors channel creator on YouTube into its ecclesiastical leadership, or well, its auxiliary leadership. Important mucky mucks, big Mormon mucky muck. And a lot of ex-Mormons, we've been pointing it out to say, technically, according to what we've seen coming out of leaked documents from the Mormon Church, that guy, apropos of nothing, but this guy who has this seemingly completely unrelated channel to Mormonism and has now basically suspended it, put it on hold, whatever, that guy has more followers on YouTube than the Mormon Church has members. And that's quite something. There's this attitude now. There's this YouTube moment. Remember the Mormon moment? This is the Mormon YouTuber moment. And so now Mormon YouTubers who rise to prominence, what they say is not unimportant. Frankly, it could technically mean that they're qualified to be leaders in the Mormon Church.
All of this alleged fraud, which I say alleged, but it's pretty crazy. You need to go watch the whole thing because it's pretty blatant fraud that is happening in the Somali community in Minnesota.
Wow, that's so funny. Even Google, all they had to do was Google.
Okay, so we're going to come back to this. All right, so if you didn't watch the clip before, I might pull up a little piece of it. I don't love it. I just, if you haven't seen this clip before, so this man goes around to all these different offices of daycare centers in downtown Minneapolis in the Twin Cities area. And then they start rattling on these daycare centers and saying they want to see the kids. The two guys are Nick Shirley and his associate, who's a man we call David. Now, I want you to pay close attention, friends, because this, it turns out, I didn't realize until this afternoon investigating in this. David claims to be a business owner in downtown Minneapolis who goes by these daycare centers all the time, even claims that he goes by there when, at night to see if there are kids there. And the whole popularity of this video is that they go to a handful of these daycare centers and say, we just want to come in and pretend that they're trying to enroll Nick's son, Joey. Give my son's name now. Mormon mouth, Nick. Just teasing. Joey, he wants to put Joey in their daycare, and they tell him they don't want that either the manager isn't there or that they don't really have any information for him. These are mainly, it does seem to be Somali owned or Somali immigrant owned facilities, and they aren't looking to service the whole wider population, wider with a D. They're looking to service their own community. And it's going to come clear, I think, a little more clear as to why that is Okay, right or wrong, this is what he's reporting. And but one of these daycare centers is Quality Learning Center, which is misspelled on their sign, Quality Learing Center. Well, maybe I can pull it up. Maybe I wasn't going to bring this other video clip in here. Maybe I'll bring it up just to introduce the topic here. Just because I realize now, in the mad dash to throw everything in here, I left out an entire video. Let's see here. Nick Shirley and David. Okay, so these are from
Getting all this information about the fraud.
A lot of it is through my own research, and then I have some contacts at the Capitol going back many.
Okay, change this. So this guy on the left is Nick Shirley, our returned missionary who is doing God's holy work. And the guy next to him is David. Very important thing to point out here. We never, to this day, even people who are blowing up on Twitter with all of this, what word should we use? Hate speech, frankly, about Somali immigrants, they all have pointed out, and it's important to realize this, that while Nick Shirley gets all the credit, this guy David did all the work. Not only does he do all the work, but the whole rhetoric for why it is that they're supposedly going to these daycare centers, challenging the people there and telling them, we know that there are no kids in there, that you're just taking the government's money, government subsidy money, and walking away with it. This whole thing is on the premise of this guy, David, who has appeared, as far as I can tell, though I haven't tracked down where, I have seen a clip of him in the Legacy Media or something that looks like a woman interviewing him for Legacy Media before. This guy claims he's been at this for years, and everything that's being claimed here is on the basis that this guy is telling the truth, which maybe he is. Let's go further, shall we?
Years, and so the data that I'm getting is 100% accurate, coming directly from research done by people at the state capitol.
All this paperwork right here.
Okay, so there's two claims. So there's three claims being made here. I just want to point out. One, he is a business owner in downtown Minneapolis. We don't know what business. We don't even know the guy's name. Apparently, he doesn't want people to know his name. Pretty bold to put your face out there. Give people your first name, if David even is his first name, and then not tell them who you are or what the business is. Okay, maybe he's doing it because he wants to insulate his business from this personal passion of his. I get that, but the fact of the matter is there's going to be some doxing risk no matter what you do. Now, I will point out, however, in closer shots, you will see that over in the bottom right-hand corner of this screen here, back behind this orange chair next to his elbow, are a couple of stone or slate tiles leaning against the wall with what looks to be some kind of SKU number written on them. Looks like it's some kind of stone tiling sample. And then all of these pictures on the walls behind them are of ceramic roof tiles or other tile applications. So it would appear some kind of ceramic and tile business. I'm not doxing anybody. I looked for maybe 10 minutes before I realized I just don't really care that much until I can figure out exactly what this guy's angle is. If I'm not afraid to dox somebody, but I don't really feel like it's appropriate in this situation. For all we know, this is this guy's hobby, and whatever his motivation, he doesn't deserve to have his whole life destroyed over it. So that's why I didn't do more. But I'm just saying, the man did put all this out there. Apparently his hobby is tracking particularly daycare centers owned by Somali immigrants. Not a lot of basis for explaining why specifically Somali immigrants owned businesses. I will point this out, though. Back in October, okay, it was revealed to the Minnesota government that their system for things like Medicaid, I believe it was Medicaid subsidized benefits or subsidies, was fraud vulnerable. The exact term escapes me, but it was vulnerable to fraud, and they've been investigating it. These guys know that there is a fraud issue in Minnesota, and I am not claiming that there isn't one. Okay, I'm just saying it gets a little fishy. Reminding yourself, these guys are very passionate to remind you constantly that these are businesses owned by or run by Somali immigrants. And, there are facts that are facts, and then there are facts that get hammered home enough to go, what are you trying to let me not see?
What are we looking at?
Algorithm, I said, not see. We're going to get into words.
The areas of fraud that I have numbers for are mostly related to childcare. This is massive fraud that is beyond anyone's imagination, the scope. And so, for example, there's a childcare not far from here in Minneapolis that has two childcares listed at the same address, and together they're licensed supposedly for 120 children. I have never seen a single child there ever, and I've been by that place at least 100 times.
Okay. One of the beautiful things about this whole story starts right here. When I say beautiful, I mean disgusting. I've been by there. He's talking about a daycare center in a part of the community he is proud to point out, happy to point out, is predominantly populated with Somali immigrants. And he says, I've been by that daycare center at least 100 times and never seen children there. Okay. I don't want to insinuate too much. Okay, friends. Right now, call this advice, David. Right now, in the age of the release of these new Epstein files, maybe go easy on the rhetoric that you go on the claims about how often you go at various times of day and night looking and peeping into, well, that's a strong word. I redact that word like it's the name of investigating if there are children in daycare centers in poor communities. Maybe no. Maybe go easy. It's advice. Call that advice, David. I'm just going to say this. I'm a father. Any parents out there? How does that feel for you? How does this claim feel for you? The fact that so many people really love this video and think that it's exposing a lot. How is it that nobody's going to daycare centers? Like, and you're going to see some footage here at some point. I'm sure I have it in here. You're going to see what they do when they get to these daycare centers. My initial reaction as a parent and, well, as a human being was to go, if that were my kids' daycare, I would hope they treat them exactly the same way. Who the hell do you think you are? But I also don't want there to be fraud. Let's watch a little bit more before we get back to
are setting up these daycares, these childcare centers, getting money from the government, but there's no kids.
No kids. Never had any of them. They're all fraught with violations, and even though they have these violations, they're still in operation and they're still getting money.
Okay. So the claims are the daycare centers are owned by Somali immigrants. The Somali immigrants obviously set them up to steal money from the government by claiming that they're serving kids that don't actually exist, and that there's some kind of corruption. They're buying somebody off. They're getting some way. There's some kind of preparation that there's no intention of serving the local community by offering daycare services. It's all a ruse just to get money from the government. And that he knows this and can take Nick to these daycare centers, and he will never see one child there, and that is not creepy at all. So these are the claims that are being made. Let me see if I fast forward, see if I include here. Okay, so then here's these parts of these videos where they take his list. Now, here's the thing. The list that this man, David, who now apparently has gone in front of the Learing Center and has since made an announcement that if anybody can prove him wrong, he will pay $100,000 from this business he doesn't want to tell, or allegedly from this business, or his profits from this business he doesn't want anybody to know about. I didn't dox the man. I said there were tiles against the wall. That's all I said. When you come, don't come at me, David.
Before they got about 800,000, and in fiscal year 2023.
I'll say this. It does appear to me, based on my research today, that he actually does have a real list of real daycare centers, and there are a lot of them. And when he says that these daycare centers are fraught with violations from inspections, he's not lying. That's serious. It's really serious, and we're going to get a chance to look into that. But he goes over the names of certain, because they're going to go look at these. He goes over the names of specific ones that he has found. He's figured out how much money they received from government grants. As far as I can tell, all of that so far is true, with the exception of that the claim that there are never kids there, which again, creepiest thing to know about a place, and no evidence whatsoever apart from he says so. And now watch how now this whole video is supposed to be to prove that he is right.
They got $904,059. This place right here. Yes.
We're outside of it.
Well, this is actually 2 daycares are registered here. One of them is Mako, which you see on this sign.
Okay, I'm going to get over this here in a minute. I wasn't planning to go this deep into this video. I got to get back to the other video here, to the real video here. I would say, I can't say that definitely is not true, but it would appear to me that is not true. I went looking for Mako. So there are 2 daycare centers. One is called Mini something. I have it pulled up here. Boop, boop. What are you called? It's called Mini something. Oh, there we go. There's the names. You know how you get in front of Mini Child Care Center, Inc. And then another was called Mako. Not like the car paint, but M-A-K-O. It would appear that only Mini that I can see is currently a registered and active daycare center. I didn't look much deeper than that because I don't really care that much, but it would appear to me that Mako Childcare changed its name and got new licensure. Maybe it changed ownership. I don't know what the story is, but that there are 2 registered to the same address. I looked and I did not see that. I could be wrong, but
the other one is Mini Child Care Center, and between the 2 of these child care centers, they're pulling in about $3 million a year, and there are no children. Every facility as you go to, the windows will be blocked out so you can't see in. There's nobody here. You won't see a single child at any of these facilities.
There are indeed no windows. All the windows are blacked out right here. All right, let's go in.
No.
And the child care center is locked. Should we ring the doorbell? Yeah. Try to get in, ring the doorbell.
Of course it's locked. It's a daycare center in America, dude. Now I get you, Nick, Shirley, when you see this, dude, I get that you're 23 years old. I don't know anything about you and your personal family life. I didn't go that deep into your personal life. You're welcome. I don't know if you have any kids. 23, I didn't have any kids, but a lot of Mormons do. Look, dude, if I were a parent at that daycare center and walked up and rattled that door like you just did, I would hope to hell and back that it would give me that resistance, and even better that an alarm would sound. I have too many kids. I don't have too many kids. That's not the way to say that. I have 3 kids. You take them to school, and pick them up from school, you'll find that they lock the doors during the day. You take them to daycare, they lock the doors during the day. I have one who's in ABA therapy, and believe you me, they lock those doors during the day. This is normal practice in America, at least in America. So already we're off to a bad start.
Well, nobody showed up. They're open 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. it says here on their sign, yet there's absolutely nobody here. And this building here, right here, has generated millions of dollars, and it seems like business isn't even open right now, and it's a weekday. And if this was a daycare center, it wouldn't just be in some industrialized building. There would be maybe like a playground or something.
Okay, another part of this that's going to become relevant. It's a weekday. This gets repeated again and again. I want you to notice that. It becomes important.
Outside, or
there's no play area for the
expectation is that because it is a weekday, they would expect to see children viewable from the street around this daycare center at any point in time that they show up at this daycare center, like a couple of not creepos looking for kids at a daycare center.
Kids. So where are the kids? Where's anybody? How can there be nobody here? And it's like this every single day. I've never seen a single child here.
I don't think, David, that you understand, and I hate to beat this dead horse. I don't think you understand how sus it looks that you say, I know that there are no children here because I'm here every day, or words to that effect. You're admitting that you sit around watching daycare centers looking for Somali children. And that's frankly creepy. I'm not saying you're guilty of anything. I'm just saying objective opinion from somebody outside of your experience. And I don't know what people who really support what you're doing here are going out saying this is radical. This guy's doing God's work. It gives me the creeps. I'm just saying, not saying that makes a man guilty of anything.
In 9 years, I've never seen a single child at this building. Right there.
Oh, then now it looks like we already got the Somalis coming through.
Yeah, they're coming. The word's out.
Hello, is this your daycare?
Roku self-serve.
Just Roku. Then they got this business. Okay, so we're just going to fast forward through most of this. Here's a point where Nick Shirley, and I just want you to see this before, oh, hell's bells. Before somebody says, oh my gosh, he's, this guy is grasping at straws. He's out there. This guy, Nick, he's just out there covering the news. He lets people say and do, say whatever they want and stuff. I just want to point out that it is his rhetoric that the star on the Minnesota flag was changed to make it look like the star on the flag of Somalia. I just brushed past it somewhere, and I just apparently brushed past it somewhere, and maybe I won't see it. You guys saw it.
Why there are no children? Have you ever seen children at this child care center?
I'm not sure. I don't.
Doesn't know if she's ever seen a child here. All right, let's go to the next location.
Honestly, I don't blame her. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but and this is where I'm going to start moving ahead so we can talk about actual evidence here. But the motivation factor, when we get to talking about a subject like immigration, we can't not talk about race. Even if you don't want to, and even if none of the words you're using are about race, because there is so much marginalization happening in these communities. When you communicate about this community, this immigrant community, you have to be mindful of how the words that you're using are taken. It's easy to say, I don't want to eat matzo balls for the rest of my life. And while you didn't say anything about anything except matzo balls, what people hear is about Jews. Well, similarly, if you're talking about a marginalized community, people who have been displaced from where they come from, people who are, yes, hopefully looking to make a better life, and it seems to me that they are, but they're in a community where people treat them badly because of their race and because of their immigration status, even if you are not meaning to. This is the cost of privilege. Privilege means that privilege is where you are in a situation where traditionally you are not marginalized for your race or your gender or your sexuality or any other aspect, because you are not, somebody in your position is not generally on the receiving end of prejudice on account of that factor. That is a position of privilege. It's not an immoral thing to have privilege. It's just a situation where you have to be aware. And so many people do and say things that are that dog whistle for the white supremacy and for Christian nationalism or nationalism, and don't even realize that they're doing it. It doesn't make it innocent that you didn't mean to, even if, it doesn't make you the worst person in the world either. But it's important to be mindful of these things. You may be talking about a person who doesn't speak English, and you can say they should assimilate. I understand that. But once again, that rhetoric, that logic, well, you live in America, speak English, is a thing that people who are racist will generally criticize somebody for. Doesn't make you racist for saying it. It just makes it a privileged thing to say, and a thing that makes that is not mindful about who you're talking about. We should always be cautious and careful about marginalized communities. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything beyond that.
The fraud only gets more from here. Make sure you stay till the very end.
Okay, so in any event, let's skip ahead, see if I can skip ahead to Quality Learing Center. So he goes through all these different centers. Here, they rattle somebody's door. They can hear somebody on the inside. That person says, "What do you want?" And he's like, "I want to enroll my boy Joey in here." And she's like, "Go." And she basically tells him to go away. Don't know who you are. Don't trust you. You got a couple of men, American men, with a camera behind them. What do you expect her to do? She's not obligated to show you around. It's a private business. She doesn't, and if that person isn't a manager of the business, she's not obligated to sell enrollments into the business. And especially when you start saying things like, "Where are the kids?" It is well within the rights of absolutely any person who runs a daycare center to go, "You need to go away."
You work here?
I was, yeah. What's happened?
Where are the kids?
Yeah?
It says it's licensed for 74 children. Right here, state of Minnesota. Where are the kids? They got paid $1.26 million in fiscal year 2025. It says they have a capacity for 74 children.
When?
Where are the kids? Right here. State of Minnesota web.
Important to point out here, at this point, at no point in this video have they gone into the daycare center, and no point do they have any evidence that there are no kids inside the daycare center. They just have evidence, filmed evidence, that the kids are not out in front of the daycare center, which, frankly, you wouldn't expect them to be, especially if, again, we don't know what time of day this is or what day it is. All we know is it is a weekday in the middle of the day, but daycare centers keep different hours. That's important to remind you. Not saying that he's lying. I'm just saying keep it in mind. Whoops. In any event, they wind up in front of, maybe I didn't include it. Oh yeah, here we go. This is it. They wind up in front of Quality Learing Center. And this is the Quality Learning Center, which is misspelled. And they make a big hullabaloo about how it is misspelled. That becomes an important feature. I'm going to remove this video. Frankly, it's depressing. So we're going to go back to our main video now. In fact, I'm going to kick that other video out of there entirely. So you see what I'm talking about when I say it could have been done. Nick, notes for future. Not that you care. It could have been done more tactfully. It could have been done in a way that, to people who care about the well-being of children, gives less ick. And now these guys are now we have these LDS YouTubers, may they be safe, happy. I mean no harm to anyone. I just am pointing out this is where the rhetoric gets bad.
It's very clear that they're making a fake business. Yeah. They just had to Google it. Yeah.
great advice. Jackson, Paul, which one are you? Okay. Not going to dwell on this. These two brothers are Latter-day Saints. Nothing wrong with that. They are Marines. Nothing wrong with that. In spite of a very testy confrontation they had with John DeLynn on Mormon stories that, frankly, I thought wasn't that bad. John DeLynn basically asked them how they reconcile killing people in the service. Frankly, it was kind of a dumb question, but I think he was. But I mean, it's somewhat interesting. But it's like, okay, how many Latter-day Saints, how many people of a broad diversity of religious backgrounds have served in the armed forces? I mean, but they were very offended at it, and I don't blame them. I mean, I thought it was too much, but I'm not them. I don't know your experience. See how easy that is? Super easy. Okay. But it becomes relevant here in a minute. And again, no knock. Thank you for your service, brothers Paul. Thank you for your service. So he says, whichever Paul you are, Jackson, I think, that all they would have to do to get that sign right, you can see it here a little bit in this image that I'm linking to here. This post is from a person named Najat, who apparently is a journalist. That's what they claim. I don't know that the person in the profile picture is the same person. Doesn't seem to me it's the same person in the actual video. Can't say that for sure or what's up with that. But in any event, they posted this reply to the video saying, "Oh, for fuck's sake, do better." And they're going to show you this video. This is the video that I'm telling you right now that I saw as recently as, what was this, last night, I think? Late last night, and went, oh crap, there's more to this. There's more to this. And sure enough, there was. They said, just Google how to spell Learning Center. Okay, anybody can make a typo. It's a silly typo. It's a learning center that misspelled learning. Ha ha ha. That's just funny. But it gets brought up again and again as if it has weight. And now the implication that they're bringing up is whoever created that sign just needs to Google something in English to see how it's spelled in English because they don't speak English. Again, you don't have to say, here, let me rattle off some racist crap to say something that is going to be perceived as racist. And that becomes important as we go along. Let's watch this video from this gentleman or this person.
It's completely closed.
Okay, I should point out, this is on, I don't know if you can see it here in the video. This is a response to Nick Shirley's video post on YouTube, the one that's getting billions of views or like 100 million views or something like that.
The windows are all blacked out. No one's working. Midday. Children should be in here. And this place is licensed for 99 children.
We about to fact check this first. If you mess with me, make sure you hit that follow button. Let's get it. What the hell is he talking about? First, the reason why you don't see any kids there on a midday is because they're permanently closed. Which makes me wonder, why didn't you show nobody what it said on that door? And I tried to read it, but you literally blurred it out. Now, the reason why they're closed isn't because of fraud. It's because they're a bad daycare center. I mean, if you was an actual journalist, you would have been...
Okay. He's about to get into the real stuff. I just want to point out a couple of things that I discovered because I saw this and I went, oh my hell, are you kidding me? You guys didn't even do that much? A couple things to point out that I think actually this response got wrong. He said that piece of paper was blurred out. It seemed to me it was, as a video professional for 30 years, it was blown out because of the, oh gosh, because of the exposure of the camera at the moment. It could be, and especially if they're filming like on cell phones, I don't know if they have like an ENG style, camera. ENG means electronic news gathering. It doesn't matter. Whatever the camera is set at, whatever its dynamic range is, a white piece of paper taped to a door could be blown out. But when he said that is a certificate of closure, basically, or a license. I'm going to get into it. There's a technical term for it. That this is basically a temporary license or even a closure notice I saw that and said, well, I'm going to validate that, but that does seem plausible that this guy walked up to a door that said that this daycare center is closed, and it wasn't. It turns out that turns out to actually probably not be true, and you're going to see that here in a minute, why I say so. But I did believe it for a minute because of the documents that I found that I'm going to hopefully be able to show you here in a minute. So that appears actually not to be true. The other thing that I wanted to point out about what he's saying there is, that it says it's permanently closed. That may very well be. He appears to have discovered that when he looked it up on Google Maps, that the business said permanently closed at that time. It appears it is actually not permanently closed. It may have said that at the time. I don't know why. When I looked up Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis, the business just wasn't there anymore. What actually happened, I would say anybody's guess. We could sit here and guess all day. Would it even matter? But just want to clarify, out of fairness, that's the caveat. But now watch what he found. This is important.
Able to find all the investigations they had since 2022. Their last investigation was in July. See that all the violations are related to child safety, which is why the facility has been in probation multiple times, which makes me believe that paper up there is a sanctioning paper. I know this because that's one of their violations that they didn't post it up. And if you see the citation, it's about sanctioning and removing licenses, which means that this facility is probably on a conditional license again. And also,
conditional license is what it's called. Thank you, sir.
They only have 1 star. I would also like to add that it was the Trump administration DHS that actually audited the facility this year. There is no reports that any fraudulent activities were happening. In other words, this man is lying to push a false narrative on Somalis.
Yes.
Okay, before we get into the next part, I'm just going to say, personally, I see no reason to drag Donald Trump into this, but it becomes relevant. This guy's bringing it up, and in a minute, it's going to get brought up again and again. I don't feel it's needed. Look, this is a scandal by itself. I don't see that it's needful to bring anybody else into it. But here's what you're going to see. Okay, before we move on with this video, I'm going to remove that video. I'm still trying to get used to this. Okay. I'm going to share with you I'm just going to share with you my whole screen. I'm going to share with you my whole screen. Yeah. I'm going to share with you my whole screen. It's going to look weird. Deal with it. All right. This thing about this guy going on and finding all the documents for these daycare centers that are mentioned in the report, the video, what have you, that's legit. And his pointing out that you can look at all the violations is legit. And this is where the story starts to come undone. Okay, I'm sharing my whole screen here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, this right here is at 1411 Nicollet Avenue. That is the address we were just looking at in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The license holder is Quality Learning Center, Inc. Can you guys see me? You guys see me okay? Yeah. Let me just. You guys see everything? Okay, good. This one is Sweet Angel Care Incorporated, 2740 Minnehaha Avenue, Suite 156, also Minneapolis. This one is Mini Child Care Center. Remember that he was talking about Mako and Mini Child Care have the same address. Again, I don't know this for a fact. I just know that by the appearance of it, I could not find Mako in the licensure, in the licensing records, which tells me it probably changed hands at some point or rebranded as a new business and had to get a new license or whatever. But here's the thing that is really good about what this guy brought up, this gentleman, or a person whose name I don't know. You scroll down in this list of violations for Quality Learning Center, Inc. Okay, and remember the claim by the guy is that the reason why there are no kids at this daycare when they go and rattle the door and demand to be let in to count how many kids there are is that it's a bad daycare center. I would have to say, if I were a parent in this community, I would say the same thing. Here's what's going to become relevant here. Okay, so the most recent violation, the most recent report put on, this is the Department of Human Services website, says June 23rd, 2025. I think he said July, but hardly important. 6 months ago. The category of violation descriptions, you have facility. Areas used by children were not in good repair. This is by the licensor, the person inspecting it. Infant and toddler care. Crib mattresses and or sheets did not meet safety requirements and or items were in a crib for an infant under 12 months. Medication and first aid. Written parental permission had not been obtained for administering medicine or topical products. Medication and first aid. The program did not follow healthcare providers' written instructions when administering prescription medication. Postings. A licensing action was not posted in a prominent place. Remember that I said just a moment ago that there is, you guys are still with me, yeah? I said just a moment ago that that's the point where I went, oh, that does appear to be true, that notice on the door may actually be this, why can't I remember words? This license, a conditional license. Basically, though, the claim has been made earlier by David and Nick that these places have been shut down by the government or lost their licenses altogether. That is not true. This one in particular, and it won't be the only one, in 2022, they received a conditional license, meaning that the government let them stay open. They passed, they had enough violations to get fines or to be told, look, you're basically under probation, but that they actually got shut down is not true. So just wanted to clarify that and point it out. Thanks, guys. Good to see you guys here. Why is there a big van? That might be, that's a good question, Trevor. I don't know. That might be the school's van, but it could be their production vehicle. I would say it's likely it's probably their whoever's doing the filming. In which case, it probably was like a professional videographer, somebody with like professional gear, which is plausible. Frankly, these days it's hard to tell. Half of the podcasts I do using my phone. All of them. I don't take I have a camera in a bag. I haven't taken out of that bag in 3 years. All right. Anyways, so do I want to show you? Yeah, I'm just going to show you a couple other things before we move on here. Okay. So similarly, this is Sweet Angel Childcare. Remember we heard about that? They were reviewed December 4th, 2025. Okay. Facility. Hazardous objects were accessible to children. Facility. Children did not have access to personal hygiene products. Health practices. Children's hands were not washed with soap and water. Program plan / interest areas. Children did not have daily access to all interest areas. Staff training. The program did not comply with first aid training requirements. Staff training. The program did not comply with CPR training requirements. Okay. And if we go down here, we can see the documents for this place. This is Sweet Angel. What's it called? Sweet Angel Childcare. They do not have a conditional license that I can see. Unlike, I brought this up, so might as well finish it. Unlike Learning Center. What's it called? Guys, I'm old and tired. Quality Learning Center, Inc. does have a conditional license issued on June 8th, 2022. If you click on it, you're going to see when this guy says this is a bad daycare center, I'm just going to say no offense to them, but per this conditional license, it does seem like a place I wouldn't want my kid. And it would make sense if they don't have a lot of kids registered there, enrolled there, if there are other options nearby, which there obviously are. And this is the rap sheet they have. On May 9th and 10th, 2022, DHS, that's Department of Human Services, licensors conducted a licensing review and follow-up visit at your facility at 1411 Nicollet Avenue, blah, 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 blah. As a result of this, blah, 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 blah. Here are the violations. Now, it's important to point out what they're saying here, the way they're saying it. Additionally, 10 of the 27 violations are repeat violations for which you were previously cited. Numerous violations related to the health and safety of children, including failure to comply with background study requirements, that is to say, background checks, as far as I can understand, for which they were ordered to pay a fine of $200. Failure to comply with requirements related to infant care, including bottle labeling, items in a crib with an infant younger than 1 year of age, crib safety inspections. We talked about that. Failure to keep hazardous items away from children. Failure to maintain adequate staff to child ratios. Failure to comply with staff training requirements, including orientation, CPR, first aid, annual in-service and child development and learning. Failure to maintain children's files. Failure to maintain personnel records. Failure to comply with hand washing requirements for children. Chronicity. Your program received its license on October 17th, 2017. Since that time, your program has demonstrated a history of noncompliance with licensing rules and statutes. The information below summarizes this history. This is the point. I am not here to shame this center for obviously not being great, a great child care center. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Sorry. Okay, just because it starts taking up resources. Notice how many of those violations were about the kids in the facility aren't getting their hands washed. The kids in the facility don't have access to to all the areas of interest. The kids in the facility have insufficient and incomplete records. The kids in the facility in the other one I didn't go over. Just trust me. Maybe you could just take my words that the kids didn't have immunization records included in their student records. To say that this was set up fraudulently is not just to say that somebody's helping, is not just to accuse these largely, allegedly, all Somali immigrants or majority Somali immigrants. Not only is somebody helping them fraudulently set up these tax taps, or what's the word I'm looking for? These tax frauds, the taxpayer fraud businesses, but that somebody who is inspecting all of these facilities is also in on the take. That's a huge conspiracy to suggest that now you're not just talking about Somali immigrants trying to cheat the government. Now you're talking about government bureaucrats going out of their way, exposing themselves to insane levels of danger of losing their job, danger potentially of criminal charges to help themselves to some of this money. And frankly, for as much money as is circulating around, I can't imagine a public servant putting their job on the line like that for a measly couple grand or whatever would be affordable to make this to make this fraud go through. The risk of criminal charges alone would make it enough for me to suggest that is an extraordinary claim to say they're actually creating fake violations about the safety of the children, the files of the children in this facility, and the children are vapor. They don't exist. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need more than David tells me that he hangs out in front of daycare centers for fun. Yep, that's not going to fly for me, David. That's my opinion. That's my feeling on the subject. Anyways, here we go. Take some of these banners down. I'm at least going to cycle it through. And yes, MB, I saw your comments about, it's going to be good when you have to put up the disclaimers. I know. I'm just being careful. All right. Now let's go back to our video clips, because this was released, I believe, in the last 24 hours. I want to point out that the clip you're about to see is from Fox News. The website that you're going to see it embedded in is Fox News. Here, let me take Hank down because we're definitely not dealing with him. Okay. I almost don't want to even want to mention this. Okay. Like I said before, I've done video production for 30 years. Fox News, it seems to me, my impression as a video professional, went out of their way to make the clip you are about to see difficult to watch. Basically, it had a summary. It has to do with the fact that the man you're about to see is the owner of Quality Learning Center, apparently. He is apparently, it would seem, a Somali immigrant. Don't know that for sure. I don't think they clarify that. And he is responding to this story. This is just fresh. This is just in the last 24 hours. And he is wearing a lavalier microphone, that is to say, a microphone clipped to his clothes, to his chest. And when they released this footage on Fox News, they released it unedited or unmixed, which means to say that the lavalier audio, the audio that's catching his voice very clearer, is coming in one channel, the right channel specifically, and then another microphone is coming in the left channel. Done this for 30 years. This is the way I've done it the whole time. It's a good way to do it. It makes a little bit of a noisy signal, but it means that you can isolate and adjust the sound of the environment separately from the sound of the person talking. This case, because I don't want to assign blame here. In this case, where the man who actually owns this Learing Center is making his response, they didn't mix the audio at all. And that's suspicious to me, Fox News. I'm just saying, I didn't say they did anything malicious. I'm just saying it's suspicious, because you know full well some devices only have mono audio, which means that if somebody has only one channel of audio coming over the speaker on their device, often cell phones, especially older cell phones, that person wasn't hearing what the man was saying over the lavalier mic. They're only listening to the atmosphere on a windy day in the wintertime. Not cool, Fox News. Maybe it was an accident. I suspect.
Statement, which was a lot of the journalism.
This guy allegedly is the owner of Quality Learning Center.
Yes, our days and our hours became outside of those hours. And
for hell's sake. I'm trying to get all of what this guy's saying because it's important.
No reports that any fraudulent activities were happening. In other words, this man is lying to push a false narrative on Somalis.
Yes, I want to start the statement with.
Okay, sorry. The rest of that story about the audio, I took Fox News audio and fixed it. You're welcome, gentlemen. I fixed it. Now you can actually hear what the guy says.
Which was a lot of the journalism that's been going on the last couple of days has been really dishonest. I don't want to play figures at anybody, but I do feel like what was done was someone came to our building outside of operating hours. When there's a specific sign on our door that says our days and our hours became outside of those hours, and then claimed, hey, they're closed and they're still making money. They're using taxpayer money to work. And it's like, you don't come outside of operational hours and then say they're using taxpayer money. That was completely false. As you can see, we're open Mondays through Thursdays, 2 to 10 p.m. He was here earlier. I don't see him right now. So it's like, are you trying to record that we're doing fraud, or are you trying to put the Somali name and the fraud in the same sentence? That's what I really understand. The last couple of days, we're open. We've been open. We haven't closed. We've been open for eight and a half years now. We haven't closed once during that period. So I want to touch on that first. The second thing is, which is kind of laughable, is the site. We mess up the site and we pay somebody to do our site. He correctly did it. We're having him work on it. We paid him to correct the site. He said it'll be done by this week. So by the end of this week, our site will be flying. The third thing, which is the fraud claim. There's no fraud going on whatsoever.
Okay, before we go on to what the government lady is saying. So granted, that did come out a little bit choppy. I can hear that now. But in effect, I hope you guys saw that, what basically was being said. So remember I said that the guy who just did the hot take where he's like, that's obviously a conditional license that's posted on the front door. This learning center, as best I remember, I can go back and check it, was cited for not holding its conditional license, not posting its conditional license in a prominent place, which according to the law there in Minnesota, it is a serious violation. If you are operating under a conditional license, meaning that the government is monitoring your facility and giving you on a probationary basis, effectively, you have to post it someplace that parents are going to see it when they're doing normal business with the that's not the legal terminology, but it's my interpretation of it, having actually read it on the government's website. So I thought, oh yeah, that's it. They put the conditional license on the door. Now we're getting from this guy that paper actually contains the hours. The point is, it's just as damning, if you ask me, because Nick, Shirley must be serious, went right up to that door and rattled it and looked right at that piece of paper, looked right at it. And if that door, and even pointed out, if I'm not mistaken, that it was business hours. Now you have the owner of the business, and we only have his word to take for it, saying that obviously was not during business hours. So the assumption that the business is permanently closed, maybe Google got that wrong, maybe the internet had that wrong. But according to the guy who owns the business, that wasn't true. They just came in at off hours. Now, what's curious is that he seems to be making the claim now that as recently as yesterday, they came back, which does appear to be true. I don't have the photographs here, but I'm just take my word for it if I would ask you. Apparently, Nick and David came back to Quality Learning Center and posted a picture after their video took off viral, wearing custom-made sweatshirts, matching sweatshirts. You guys look so cute. Adorable couple. That said 1-800-FRAUD, and then showed a kind of an artist's portrayal of the sign of Quality Learning Center, Quality Learning Center misspelled. And there, apparently, either yesterday or recently, this guy David, whose real name we don't know, whose business we don't know, and I didn't ask anybody to find out. I don't want anybody to find out. Stood on the doorsteps of that person's business, where the address is plainly visible, stood on the door of this man's business and exposed him to the whole world and called him a fraud. And then this man offered that if anybody who can prove him wrong, he will write them a check for $100,000. This is now just gloating without having proven anything. If they didn't find children at this daycare center, it could be that the daycare center was locked. It also could be, as this man says, they came during off hours or on a day when they don't do regular business. After all, you did hear him say that we're here from Monday through Thursday from 2 to 10 p.m. That's a whole lot of days for it to be true, to say this is the middle of the day and it is a weekday and there are no children here, in spite of the fact that they can't see inside that building. So again, all of these claims are being made in accordance with this man. The main evidence is the testimony, not under oath, of David, that he hangs around these Somali-owned daycare centers in Minneapolis, watching to see how many children go in and out of there. And that's what we're supposed to take as the gospel truth about the fact that there are no kids. And obviously this is all a big, Somali immigrant scandal.
Are aware of
this woman apparently represents the Department of Human Services in Minnesota.
a video that's being circulated that has gained local and national attention about child care centers in Minnesota. While we have questions about some of the methods that were used in the video, we do take the concerns that the video raises about fraud very seriously. Each of the facilities mentioned in the video has been visited at least once in the last 6 months as part of our typical licensing process. And in fact, our staff are out in the community today to visit each of these sites again so that we can look into the concerns that were raised in the video. At the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, we care about making sure that every dollar of the Child Care Assistance Program and other programs is going where it's supposed to be going and used as intended. Several of these centers have been evaluated for program integrity in past several years. Some of them have been operated for a number of years. One of the centers, Quality Learning Center, closed just over a week ago. I think another one that was mentioned had closed maybe even several years ago. So there have been ongoing investigations with several of those centers. None of those investigations uncovered findings of fraud.
Okay, it's a point to clear out. This woman's very professional. She's definitely got it down. She's got the spin down. And for all I can tell, she's not lying. And these are serious allegations, and she does appear to be taking them seriously. I will point out, we just heard from the owner of the business that they have not closed, that they have been in business, that they were closed on a normal schedule that is posted on that page of hours on their door, and without showing us what it actually says, but just telling us it's Monday through Thursday and only from 2 to 10 p.m. So, I mean, and she's saying that it did close a week before. Maybe she made a mistake. Maybe he's lying. So that is something to take with a grain of salt. See how these is? Okay. All right. So now this is going to.
If you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this.
Oh, I accidentally reversed. I'm like, that's not right. I accidentally clicked on the timeline and jumped all the way back to the beginning. Okay. So that's the end of that clip. Let's go ahead and move on from there. We're going to go back to our friends, the Paul brothers. And this is where things are going to accelerate a little bit out of control.
They visited, over $100 million in fraud was uncovered. And the FBI is actually cracking down on this as well. And Kash Patel, look, I get it. We all have opinions upon Kash Patel, okay? But he tweets out about some FBI raids that have been happening in Minnesota, exposing some of these different fraudulent things that are happening. And it begs the question, why is this having to be done by a 23-year-old return missionary? Like, why is that falling on the shoulders of Nick Shirley? God bless you, Nick Shirley, for taking that upon you, and you're doing some great work.
It doesn't. He wants to do it. Because he makes money at it, sure. But is that the only reason? I would think so. And that alone would be enough, frankly, Hayden, right? To piss me off. But it gets deeper. And I hate to say this, but you and bro, you're not helping the situation with the way you're covering this. That's about to get clear.
But how come it's taking a man like that on Fox News here, talking a little bit about why he thinks that this isn't being done, especially in this community, this Somali community in Minnesota? If you want to click on that X link there, Hayden.
Are there local reporters like that in your area? And why do you think they weren't doing the work that you did?
I don't know. They're scared of being called nowadays. Because it's Somalians that are committing this fraud, people are scared to be called Islamophobic, racist, in which has nothing to do with what's going on, because fraud is fraud. It doesn't matter if it's a black person, white person, Asian person, Mexican. Fraud is fraud. And we work too hard simply just to be paying taxes and enabling fraud to be happening.
Nick, when I was...
Okay, that's the whole clip. That at Latter-day Saints, safety and peace upon them. No ill will towards them at all. That is the whole of that Fox News clip that they published. Maybe they didn't think the rest of it was important. I put to you, Brothers Paul, other Brothers Paul, because of course there are other YouTubers, Brothers Paul. Gentlemen, I put to you that whether or not you meant to cut out the rest of this interview, it is significant what was missing from this statement by your boy, Mr. 23-year-old returned missionary. I want to point out it was you who brought up that he was a 23-year-old missionary. And frankly, if you hadn't, I might never have done this story. Bear in mind, I'm just saying, I'm not putting it on you. I'm not putting anything on you. I'm just saying it was you that brought up this guy's Mormon. I didn't even know that. And then I dug into it and saw this. The rest of this clip, which you're going to see on Nick's, proudly posted on a post on Twitter, where I'll let you read it for yourself. Read while you listen is the point, okay? This is something he posted. Nick Shirley posted on his Twitter with this clip from the remainder of this his statement to the Fox News interview. It's going to break in with Tim Walz.
White supremacy.
So it sounds to me, Nick, that Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
Yeah, Tim wants votes. There are entire apartment complexes where white people have been pushed out of these apartment complexes because Somalians have taken over, and they're inside of these towns like Minneapolis, where they can go get votes from these people. And if you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this stuff happen, and because you're going to call a white person racist for calling out facts, this is what's going to happen to a state like Minnesota. Minnesotans, they say Minnesota nice, but they are very upset. And I fully understand why they're upset, because they don't have a governor who's actually working for them. He's actually working against them.
Nick, your video's been viewed 93 million times.
Okay. Nick, did you say anything blatantly racist there? Anything overtly racist there? I can't say. But on its face, you brought up specifically that they are Somali, and that there are people that, like Tim Walz, mentioning that you're doing this for the benefit of white supremacy, and then in claiming that just because he says so doesn't make it true, you make a pretty strong dog whistle argument to say, to basically advocate for great replacement theory, or this idea that there's one side of the political spectrum in America that is trying to replace white people, specifically white people, with people from a different ethnic group, so that they can get votes and are willing to do whatever it takes, pay whatever it takes, and sustain fraud in order to get those people to vote. While you don't use the words, great replacement theory, that in a nutshell is what great replacement theory says. And it's a pretty bald-faced white supremacist lie. And look, if you don't want to be associated with white supremacy, don't pull their talking points out. Now, maybe you don't know that's what that is. Maybe you've heard it all your life. Maybe people around you have always said it. We've all been victims of understanding. Well, I don't know. Most of us, I would say, especially people who grow up privileged in a privileged community. It is uncomfortable to be confronted with our privilege. And we go on.
What do you think will be the result of this? Do you think that things will change because of bringing attention to this, or do you think it'll be much the same, swept under the rug and keep moving forward?
Yeah, there better be change. People are demanding it. The investigations have been launched just from that video alone. And so there better be change, because like I said, we work way too hard to be paying taxes. We work way too hard to be not knowing where our money's going. And at the end of the day, people in the government, they work for us. We don't work for them. And so it's their responsibility to hold these people accountable. And so if there's not something that's happened, people are going to be very frustrated. And so if President Trump's watching this, it's time to really get down to nitty gritty and to make a difference in this place of Minnesota that is pretty much like Somaliland right now.
pointing out. Just pointing out. Nick, when you see this, and you won't, oh, no, you might. You're the one who brought Donald Trump into it again. Somebody else brought him into it earlier. And remember, I said there's a couple of points. Somebody else. I didn't bring Donald Trump into this. As far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump doesn't have to have anything to do with this. Okay, you guys are the ones bringing him into it, and that is not telling. Okay, now the other thing that I don't know if you realize how you dog whistled this a little bit here, pretty baldly. And we're going to get into how this suddenly spirals into a lot of the rhetoric that I think maybe you don't realize you've been surrounded with, maybe your whole life, okay, and not realized it. But this is white supremacy talking. But you said we an awful lot without clarifying we as we, the American taxpayer. Do I expect you to say that every time? No. But if you're talking about accusing Somali immigrants of stealing tax dollars from the American taxpayer, and you say we in the way that you did there, and call this communication advice. I'm not accusing you, strictly speaking, of anything. In fact, I don't think that you, Nick, I'm watching your content now, quite a bit of it. I don't think you did this with malice, okay? I'm just saying from a communication standpoint, this is very, very tricky. And frankly, it's offensive to communities, to BIPOC community, okay? And it's not something I think you want to be associated with, okay? When you say we pay taxes and we don't want our taxes, etc., blah, 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 blah. The dichotomy you're setting up here, the difference here, is that you seem to be suggesting that people who are Somali immigrants don't pay taxes and that white Americans do pay taxes. Whether you use those words, this is the insinuation you're leaving. It's important to communicate clearly, to say at that point, use your words carefully and say, we, the American taxpayer, expect to pay our taxes and have them guarded or have them well reserved and well used. And that is a very non-controversial statement. But when you put it in the context of a conversation where you're suggesting that there is widespread fraud among Somali immigrants, it feels pretty racist, whether or not that's what you meant.
Totally agree. You have these communities that are immigrants, and everyone's so scared of being canceled nowadays that they think that if you expose the fraud that's being committed in, for example, the Somali community in Minnesota, then you're going to be doxxed as a racist and someone that's Islamophobic, when in reality, those are just stupid tropes that have nothing to do with the actual crimes that are being committed. And it's absurd. Such an upside down world that we're living in nowadays.
Go to Somalia. Somalia sucks as a country. It just does. I mean, watch Black Hawk Down. I mean, obviously that's a movie, but just do some Googling of Somalia. It's a terrible place, an absolutely terrible place. That's why people are leaving Somalia to go to other places.
Yeah. Brethren. Can I call you brethren? We're not of the same faith anymore. Okay. Again, chalk it up to communication advice. You should let your first statement have a conversation with that second statement. Okay. This has nothing to do with race. Why do people always make it about race? Then follow that up with Somalia as a country sucks, and going off with all the reasons why it sucks. And hence they're trying to come here. Again, if just because you didn't say the racist part out loud doesn't mean you didn't say it. Because frankly, this is a context where marginalized communities are being put in a very vulnerable position. The insinuation that you're giving there, Brothers Paul, is that you want to single out Somali immigrants as cheating the American taxpayer because of the place that they come from. And that leaves everybody with a taste in their mouth of you're saying that's because of their race, or that it's because of some other factor that is unique to their being Somali. And then you go on and reinforce it. Whether you say it overtly or not, you go on enforcing it.
You have to ask yourself, what is the underlying culture that creates a place like that? And the fact of the matter is, Islamic-run countries, including Somalia, but throughout all the Middle East, where all of these terrible things are happening, they all are terrible countries. And we have to live in a place, and by terrible countries, I don't mean the people there are worth less than anybody in America. What I mean is that there is a prevailing culture that makes it so these countries are filled with violence, poverty, incest, and abuse. And all of these countries have a common theme that they are run by Islamic dictators.
And it's tough because
Okay. I think maybe there is a misunderstanding here, and it's an important one. Brother Paul, your suggestion here is that it can't be racist if it doesn't involve describing somebody's value as being inferior based upon their race. That's what I'm hearing. Whether and if that's not what you're saying, be good to clarify there. I'm happy to learn. I'm happy to learn that you didn't mean to say that. But racism is not divided along those terms, especially when it comes to white supremacy, which is a very particular brand of racism. Oftentimes, dog whistles used to explain why white supremacy should be the rule in the land, in a land where people are supposedly all created equal and respected as created equal and equal in their rights and opportunities. A very common word would be Christendom. A very common word would be constitutionality, even though it has nothing to do with constitutional or not constitutional. Very common words are traditional family values, traditional values. These can all be misinterpreted in the right context, or more appropriately, wrong context, as meaning this is what white people, values of white people versus values of people who are not white. If you don't mean that, I'm going to give you pay you the credit that in your mind, you don't mean that. You're going to have to call it out. I know that's awkward. And as Hayden was just speaking, and as Nick was just speaking and saying, it makes it difficult to, people feel like they have to walk on eggshells about this subject. Yes, they absolutely do. You're right. Everybody feels like they have to walk on eggshells around the subject. Yes, they absolutely do. Because the words we say have effect on the way these people live. For all we know, listen, all people did with this Pizzagate thing, if you remember it, was to suggest that maybe some nut job on a 4chan forum was right. And the next thing you knew about some conspiracy, and the next thing you knew, some guy with a semi-automatic rifle shows up to Cosmic Pizza and starts shooting up the place. Words have power with these kinds of things. And when people say this, when you start to say people from this country are from you didn't say this word, but it's been said, a shithole country. You didn't use that word. Is that not what you said, though? Did you say or not say that this fraud alleged is part of some Islamist agenda? Did you not say that with that word? And did you not say that? Even if you don't mean it, don't go near it, or talk about what's really important to talk about, clarifying what you're meaning to say, because what you're seeming to say here is coming off pretty racist. And I'm going to go as gentle as I can on the association of how these 4 LDS men are all preaching, frankly, preaching at the pulpit of white supremacy, and that is in part attributable to the Book of Mormon.
Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we obviously want to espouse the things that are held in the Holy Scriptures, and that God is no respecter of persons, and that all are alike unto God, black and white, bond and free, male or female.
Which is true.
Which is true.
I respect that you believe that. What I'm saying, and I once believed it too. Okay? So I'm just being gentle here. Being as gentle, but as plain as I can be here. When you talk about the Holy Scriptures, and from the perspective of Latter-day Saints, you're talking about the story of Cain and the mark of Ham. You're talking about the mark of Cain. And if you don't believe it, great. I'm glad to hear you don't believe it. If you don't, I'm not going to speak for you. You're also talking about the mark on the Lamanites to make them dark and loathsome so that they would be unattractive to the Nephites, their fair-skinned cousins, in the Book of Mormon. You talk about the Holy Scriptures, you got two there that traditionally, in the rhetoric, in the mouths of Mormon prophets and apostles, saying that God sorts people out by race, and that there are people who were less dignified in the premortal existence, and that's how they ended up being black or having a darker shade of skin color when they were born. The fact that that isn't what you believed, and I'm going to do you the credit, I'm going to do you the favor of saying you probably don't believe it. It's there in the history, and when it gets unmentioned and unsaid, but something adjacent to it gets brought into the conversation, that's going to be, it's said whether you're saying it or not. So it's important to clarify. Okay, the assumption you're giving out there is everybody knows that Mormons are not racist. I'm going to clue you in, brethren. That's not true. People assume, generally speaking, if they have any exposure to the history of Mormonism, they assume that you think that people who have darker skin are inferior to you. If that's not what you mean to say, I would suggest to you, and chalk it up to just communication. Be clear. Maybe, for example, you say, listen, in the past, when we talk about our Holy Scriptures, this is a suggestion. When we talk about our Holy Scriptures, this is this passage that I personally believe. This is the passage that we believe. This is the passage that we currently believe, being aware that in the past, the interpretations of these passages have been otherwise. And if you want examples, gentlemen, I'm happy to furnish you with some. This isn't strictly an anti-Mormon channel, and that's not the point of what we're talking about here. But this is where this is getting really hairy, because we're about to go into, and I know this, I kept you guys for a while now. We're going on 2 hours. I'm going to try and get done as close to 2.5 hours as possible, or without going over 2.5 hours as possible, because we are about to get into Nick's history. And I want to just clarify before we get into that. If you, brethren, didn't mean to affiliate yourself or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I understand you do not speak for, or Mormonism and Mormon doctrine, with what you're going to hear, you're and I understand you don't know Nick personally. Nick, Shirley, you must be joking. You don't know Nick Shirley personally, apparently. It would have been good due diligence, though, to find out more about what he posted if you disagree with it, because the concern is that you're going to agree with it.
Now, while holding to that, we also need to be aware of dangerous and harmful cultures that are in the world. And that doesn't mean that we just, tolerate whatever any culture wants to do that's associated with any specific, ethnicity or religious group. But when we see evil coming from wherever, when we see evil coming within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of members that do things that are very not okay, we just need to look at that and root out and chase darkness from among us, like it says in section 50 of the Doctrine and Covenants, or in section
123.
No, section 123 is talking about bringing all hidden things in darkness to light, but section 50 talks about chasing darkness from among us. And in whatever form or whatever culture community that comes from, if it's darkness, if it's evil, we need to root it out and expose it. And it's not because it's associated with XYZ group or religion that's why it should be targeted. No, when evil is happening, evil should be exposed wherever it's happening.
Boy, did you say a mouthful there. Okay, the agreements. Amen, brother. Wherever evil happens, especially if it happens inside the church, it should be called out by the members of the church. Without saying Wade Christofferson or a myriad of other names, you said a mouthful there. I want to just recognize it. I want to recognize it. Okay, good. I like that. I like that. It's about all I liked about that little rant, but I want to acknowledge it. Okay, I think that you guys, I think you are sincere in your wanting not only to protect the church and its reputation, but also to protect yourselves, protect your families, protect your faith. I get that. And I just want to acknowledge that. I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that, because the rest of this is just bad shit. Okay? The assumption, again, remember I said a moment ago, Christendom is often a term that's used as a dog whistle for white supremacy. Even though, if you look at the history of Christians, Christianity is very ethnically diverse. Religion, especially if you go back to its origins, how many Egyptians were Christian? How many people from Northern Europe or Northern Africa, excuse me? How many people even from back in Palestine? Even some people assume because of the Gospels that it all started in Palestine. For all I know, it may have, but nonetheless, when somebody says Christendom, and then they list off traits that anybody else listening to that conversation, minus the word Christendom, would say they're talking about white people, then it becomes then it becomes interpreted and understood as, oh, you say Christendom, what you're saying is white people. So just be mindful of that. To say something is xenophobic, right? That it is fearful of another culture rather than of another race. To say that that's got nothing to do with race is absurd. If it summons the same language as arguments about race, it's about race. Even if that's not what you say, you have to. I know it's unfair. It truly is unfair. But communication is like this. You don't just watch what you say. You have to watch what people hear. In fact, it's far more important to watch what people hear.
And that includes within Christ's church and stuff like that. And I just think it's so unfortunate nowadays that we have to walk on eggshells talking about things like this, being scared of being called an Islamophobic or racist or anything like that. We should all be able to get behind the fact that committing fraud to the tune of billions of dollars is not okay and needs to be stopped. It's absolutely silly. And so, anyways, as always, I love criticism. I love you guys pushing back in the comments. If you disagree with me or with Nick Shirley here, let us know in the comments. We'd love to have a great conversation with you.
I'll do you much better. I got a whole episode for you. Okay, so I just wanted to point out, because we're about to get into those controversial things with Nick Shirley, I want to give you a little trigger warning here. Those of you out there who are sensitive about conversations about race and about white supremacy, this is going to delve pretty hard into interviews that Nick Shirley, you must be joking. Sorry, I have to use the mnemonics. I'm old, guys, and it's late. I'm tired. We're going to get into some Nick Shirley's content. I am going to include as much as I can about his trying to be fair on the subject of Islam versus Christianity. But I'm going to bring up, it's very key what you choose to include in the coverage on a subject that's so racially charged, even if the conflict is between religious groups that are not strictly one ethnic group. People are going to interpret it that way. It's important to decide, is this adding to the conversation, and what is it adding to the conversation? Because I wanted to ask everybody, please forgive me. This is not my content. I'm just highlighting it.
Deuce Volt, God's kingdom will be secured. Jesus Christ gives us freedom.
Spoken to a lot of Muslims today, and they think you're a hate antagonist, that you're coming out here to spread hate.
These people have never suffered even an ounce for their country.
Okay, so just real quickly before I go. So this is from two different instances, two different places where this gentleman was interviewed. I tried to look for his name. I ran out of time. This man claims he is, and I'm sure is, a January 6th. Oh, use a polite word. A January 6th participant who allegedly, and I believe probably was, held for a long time that I think I would agree smacks of a violation of his and their right to due process. I'll go that far. Over having stormed the Capitol building on January 6th. And we all remember that. Apparently he got a pardon, as all of them did. And he is describing a few things here. One of the things he's describing a lot of conversation. There's a lot of conversation here that's going to harken back to this saying that you're going to see on the pulpit that he presented here.
Great conversation with you.
Deuce Volt, God's.
Okay. This is why, again, Brothers Paul, I'm assuming you haven't seen this. Greg Manson, I'm going to assume you haven't seen this video. And I wouldn't expect you to have seen everything that Nick has covered and featured. He's done multiple conversations with this gentleman and his group and the claims they've made. And I would be concerned, especially if I were in the service. I'm treading this very carefully because it's a sensitive subject and I have not served. And I thank you, brethren, for your service. This phrase, Deus Vult, is a phrase that was coined in the Crusades as a war cry for assaulting Muslims and Jews, and primarily Muslims. And this guy, who's proud, and you'll hear him talking a little bit more about how proud he is to have not betrayed his country and Donald Trump. I didn't bring Donald Trump into this. They're bringing it into it. I'm just pointing it out. I'm just letting them talk. I'm going to let him talk. He's out there preaching from this pulpit that says Deus Vult, which dates back to the Crusades. And this is why I want you to be careful about this, okay? All right. And I'm just saying this because it rubs me so wrong. Not just as a person who considers myself a conscious person and conscientious of the suffering of other people, but as a descendant of Jewish people. Anytime there is any call out to the Crusades or to the Holocaust, I am very keen to pay attention. You may not know this, but there was a man named Houston Stewart Chamberlain who wrote an article called God Wills It. The phrase Deus Vult is Latin for God wills it. When Adolf Hitler saw this article that his hero and mentor, Houston Chamberlain, had written to advocate for Germans, for the German Volk to join up with the NDSAP and revolt in the Munich beer hall putsch, which did fail. When he wrote that it is said that Hitler cried like a child. He was so grateful for his mentor, from whom he got most of his racial hate. And this British German man, the article that he wrote, the title was "God Wills It," Deus Vult. From that time until now, it is very well pointed out that Deus Vult is a symbol for far-right extremists and fascists. And I understand that I put myself in serious danger by even bringing this up, because there are actual now executive orders saying that you may be an extremist if you speak against fascism. But I come from a generation that believed that fascism was evil. And I tread lightly, but I will not be silenced on the subject. I believe it's evil. And I understand that I'm not entitled to require anybody else to believe differently or the same. The reason why this becomes so pertinent when they are bringing in Donald Trump into the conversation has nothing to do with Donald Trump himself. The one that it has to do with is Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump's Secretary of War, I'm sure you were very aware of, who was expelled and excluded from right after the January 6th riots. Frankly, that's the more polite way to describe it. The January 6th activity, for which this man allegedly went to jail pending the outcome, or I don't even know if he went to trial. But apparently came out of that situation, came out of prison for it or jail for it. Okay. In the weeks after that, the reason why Pete Hegseth wasn't able to join in the inauguration of President Biden was when one of his colleagues pointed out that he had Deus Vult tattooed on his bicep. And according to the United States military, according to the service, that made him a potential threat from inside the service. And so it was determined that he couldn't participate. And following these and other accusations about his activity, that's how Pete Hegseth found himself, as I understand it, compelled to leave the service. Okay, this is sensitive. This is not a small thing. This is very much clearly made to harass and threaten Muslims particularly, but also to advocate for white supremacy. Again, I'm going to say, just because Nick, included this man and his pulpit in his coverage, doesn't mean he agrees with them. But he did it. He did a lot of coverage about the guy. And if only the things that he had said in that Fox News interview, that also, for a second I slipped into Spanish, también, that also called out this great replacement theory garbage, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. It could have just been simple coverage like I'm doing now. But this gets nasty.
Kingdom will be secured. Jesus Christ gives us freedom.
I've spoken to a lot of Muslims today, and they think you're a paid antagonist, that you're coming out here to spread hate.
These people have never suffered even an ounce for their country. I stood for 4 years and 6 days without ever turning on President Trump. They offered me to go home for that second impeachment hearing. They said if I was willing to testify against President Trump and simply say he made me do it, then I'd be able to go home. I never turned on President Trump. I never turned on my country. I never cooperated. I never even had a trial. And so to suffer what I've suffered for patriotism, for our country, for our freedom of speech here, and to be told by random podcasters that I'm anything but genuine, they have no idea what it's like to really be a man and have integrity and stand for something, even willing to die for it. So these people here, they want to try to drag down our movement by calling me Israeli, calling me a Mossad agent. It's because they're Muslim simps. Quite honestly, most of them are paid by Qatar, especially the bigger ones. You saw these people, a lot of conservative influencers. They shuttled over to Qatar recently, and those are the same people pointing fingers at me, trying to say that my intentions as a Christian are being they're subversively Jewish. It's ridiculous, and this is what Christians need to do all across America. We cannot show weakness anywhere. They showed weakness in Dearborn, and look what happened to them. Completely conquered. Now Texas, completely opposite. Hundreds of Americans willing to stand up, and we will never be conquered like they've been conquered in Dearborn. So unless we have leadership, real men, to stand up in this country, Nick, we will see entire cities like Minneapolis fall to Islam. And that's why I'm out here, because I want to make sure white children and Christian children have a future in America.
The mixed messaging here, okay? You can't overlook it. Now, again, just because Nick Shirley covered it doesn't mean he agrees with it, but he covered a lot. And he covered it again and again, and he didn't make any statement about it, explaining that this doesn't reflect his beliefs. And he made several statements here that frankly called the same to mind for me, and that is my opinion. It does not reflect anybody else's opinion, including the organization. But I want you to watch this. Now, here's one thing, okay, I will point out. In the age of the whole Candace Owens thing, I know this is this will feel like way out of left field, okay? In the age of the Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk controversy, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out here throwing around some pretty anti-Semitic things. And failing to support or not adequately supporting the cause of the state of Israel or of Benjamin Netanyahu or his party or administration is not anti-Semitism. That being said, as soon as anti-Semitic tropes get thrown in there, they get thrown in there, and it's important to point out whether or not you agree with them and not simply assume that it's true or false. I'm pointing this out. If this gentleman, and apparently he has been accused of being paid by Jewish people, and that if he is receiving hate for that, as much as I dislike him and dislike his character, and you're about to see more why, hatred for Jewish people is hatred, and it's wrong. And hating people for being Jewish is wrong. It's part of this whole conflict, and it necessarily will become an inherent part of conversations whenever we talk about Islam, because primarily Muslims generally tend to have very hateful feelings towards Jewish people, depending on the area that they are from, depending on how closely they connect to certain passages of the Hadith or the Quran. And I'm not here to preach against that. Again, I just want to say, while I am standing here to point out how wrong I feel this rhetoric against Muslims is, I am your local happy-ish resident atheist. I do not simp for Muhammad or for the Quran or for Islam. I do not like these religious ideas, but I am a secularist, true blue in every part of my core, who believes that this country is better with a diversity of religious opinions. Not to say, as some people will assume, because I'm an atheist, that I believe for whatever reason that there shouldn't be religion in this country. Quite the opposite. Let there be a diversity of religion and let everybody celebrate it. Let everybody practice according to their own conscience. And if Korihorism is something that appeals to people, I have no need to enforce anybody to believe it. It will win on its own values. And in the marketplace of ideas, let Islam make its own case too. Well, what I'm saying is this discrimination that you're about to hear reach a fever pitch on Nick Shirley's videos, it concerns me. with this whole Somali immigrant bias, prejudice that he is showing. You can say that has nothing to do with white supremacy. You can say that has nothing to do with racism. But then there's this.
Jake then gave a speech to all the people that showed up to the march.
Our country was founded by strong men who are willing to stand in the face of evil. And our country will be saved by strong Christian men who are willing to stand in the face of Islam again. Here's your kryptonite, Muslims. Here's your kryptonite. We will drive you to the sea, across the sea, back to where you came from, with pigs in our hands and Jesus in our hearts. You cannot stand against the strength of white American men. You Muslims need to go home before we send you packing. I suggest you leave now before the crusades really start. Into that, so.
And then we'll probably skip over. But what's important to see here is that this interview is basically almost word for word exactly what he said separately in the separate interview. So here you have a couple of interviews where this guy points out about why he, defends himself as not being a paid provocateur. I don't know whether he is or not. I don't have any reason to assume that he is. I don't know any nearly enough about him to say one way or another. But of course, on the other side, you'll hear the rhetoric of people claiming, that Qatar was involved in paying off provocateurs and so on and so forth. Let that be. Whatever is the truth is the truth. But what you just heard was some disgustingly white supremacist rhetoric, and if that's not clear, then it needs to be made clear. Now, again, for all I know, Nick is just trying to cover the conflict with his journalism. But it matters how much you feature what part of the conversation. And there were multiple interviews that got featured here with this guy and his crusader agenda. At some point, you're letting the message be dominated by a side that's going to raise the question, whose side are you on here? And you can say it's got nothing to do with Mormonism, or it's got nothing to do with Donald Trump, or it's got nothing to do with MAGA. All of these things, what gets left unsaid gets, makes a statement.
I want to make sure this wasn't some sort of psyop by somebody coming in here just trying to cause a bunch of
No, I've baptized
chaos.
18 men in prison. I love Jesus with all my heart. He is my Lord, my King, my Savior, and He is my God. And I will do anything to protect His kingdom. So this is what we're doing today, because Islam is encroaching. Christians are not safe in Islamic countries, and we cannot allow them to take over here.
And now they have a pig.
This is Moo Hamhead. This is Moo Hamhead.
Real pig they have right
Aisha
here.
was playing with dolls.
And are you taking this into the helicopter? Islam, Muslims, they don't eat pork. Therefore, they brought out 5 live piglets and 1 dead pig.
Just very clear, just very shortly, and I did look this up. It is only very stringent and strict interpretations of what is halal that require Muslims to have no contact with pigs. And primarily, from my understanding, it is particularly with the dead carcass of a pig. But there are Muslims who can touch a pig, and their interpretation of their doctrine, it does not. It makes them perhaps unclean or impure in some way, and there's a ritualistic purification. The reason why I'm bringing that up, and I wouldn't even bring it up, is that the religion that does definitely have doctrine that describes someone as unclean for having come into contact with pigs are kosher laws. And so you can just not say Jewish law and not use those words, and nonetheless leave the interpretation open that what you're saying should make anybody feel threatened, feel afraid, especially if you're using threatening language, if their religion prohibits eating pork or coming into contact with unclean animals according to their law. Now, I'm not saying those laws are true or correct. I'm just saying you can't tell me that this is just about Muslims, especially with so much charged rhetoric that's associated with the Third Reich from the same mouth.
Muhammad's kryptonite. That's his name. Muhammad's kryptonite here. We're going to be marching through Plano, Texas. Deuce Volt, God's kingdom will be secured. Jesus Christ gives us freedom.
We're going to lose our country if we don't.
And how long until you think?
Okay.
Back from his.
Oh, for heaven's sake. So, as we go back through this, as I get queued back up here, we're coming to the end of this coverage. I want to thank you guys for being part of this with me. We're going to get close to 2.5 hours. I'm going to try and wrap up as quickly as possible here. I wanted to include a few things, a few passages, just in the interest of being fair, of Nick, what I discovered out of Nick Shirley's content on his YouTube channel, and particularly even the same video. In fact, let me put up his handle again, of him covering both sides of the conversation when it comes to Christians versus Muslims. And I just wanted to point that out in the interest of being fair and showing that, as far as I know, this guy is trying to just cover the controversy. And frankly, if he hadn't come out to make that argument about how, quote unquote, Somali people were moving into Minnesota to displace white people, and that there is and insinuate, if not outright accuse, that Tim Walz and Democrats are willing to engage in some kind of fraudulent conspiracy to defraud the taxpayer for an amount of money that's significantly smaller than the amount of money that the Mormon church benefited using paying dollars through Ensign Peak Advisor. Just to mention it one time, because otherwise I will lose all street cred at the ex-Mormon meetings. Okay? That they are engaging in some kind of conspiracy in order to replace white people with non-white people. I would say this could just be coverage, but it will, again, your words matter. And the fact that you don't think it's appropriate for people to walk around eggshells on the subject of privilege when it comes to white supremacy or Christian nationalism is a problem for all of those of us observing this, especially when it turns out that, frankly, Nick, it turns out the story that you're pushing, I'm calling bullshit on it. This is bullshit. It turns out, yes, there are daycare centers that are being run inadequately, when they are dangerous, and they are underserved. But to come out and say this is about a difference between two cultures, Brothers Paul, or to say that this is about something that a righteous, priesthood holder, a man of God, Brother Mattson, has to expose because everybody else is looking the other way, to then turn around and connect it with this great replacement theory and this anti-Islamic rhetoric, it is Islamophobic. It is white supremacist. And you're not having intended it to be so, first of all, is not clear. So I would suggest you should revise and review how you communicate on the subject. It's either not clear or it's untrue. And that is of great concern to those of us in the adjacent community. I want to give you the benefit of a doubt. I want to invite every one of you, if you want to confront me on this subject, whether that is a phone call, whether that is on my program, inviting me to your program. I'm not suggesting that you do those things, and I'm not trying to clout chase you. If you want to have a conversation about this, I'm happy to confront you directly, or to be confronted directly, and to listen to what your feedback is. somebody adjacent to your community, if this is not what you meant, I wish you would say so, and I wish that you would go back and look at this again. And in the future, when these claims come about, be more careful with the accusations you make and with the accusations you're leaving on the table, because it does indeed come off like you just are advocating for white supremacy and Christian nationalism, and it's a problem. And it's not the first time that something similar has come up with your channels. Nick, Shirley, I don't know your channel other than the content I've shown here today. But I'm being as fair as I can here. This guy that you're going to see here, he looks like he has the appearance of all the other Christians here protesting at this Epic Center or Epic City Islamic Center in Texas. But I was watching him, listening to him. His rhetoric sounded just like many of these other gentlemen behind him. But I thought it important to include what he said, because I thought, well, okay, this is at least an improvement.
This part of Texas.
Well, years ago, I was standing out on Bourbon Street preaching, and a lawyer from the Vatican came up to me and suggested we started killing Muslims. And I said, no, we're Christians. We can't do that. And he told me it was because Europe was already lost. That was 10 years ago. He said Europe was already lost. So if Europe's already lost, America's not far behind. We don't have 10 years. We got to get on it now. And I'm not talking about using violence like he suggested. I'm saying we need to use our words. We need to use our votes. We need to stand up and speak up against Islam.
Don't love the rhetoric, love the energy. Pointing out, again, this is great. This at least is good to point out. Anytime that there's an insinuation that you're calling for violence, point out you don't mean with violence, because we're living in a day and age. Again, Brothers Paul, a moment ago, you were talking about in this same video, Jackson, I think, that, Somalia, you said, was that Somalia sucks, if I quote you directly. And you said because it is run by an Islamic dictator, and because in an Islamic country, you said, it's violent. There are few places in the world as violent as the United States of America. And we need no dictators for it, whether we throw accusations about dictators around or not. And when people stoke up racial hate, violence will ensue. When we drive divisions between each other, that gentleman right there knew he said something right there that was going to conjure up the hatred in the hearts of people around him. He recognized that and realized that there needed to be a specific call to say, this is how we're going to do it, with words and with votes, not with violence. Don't love the energy, don't love the intention, definitely loving that the mindfulness of communication.
Your sign right here says Americans Against Islamification. Are you here? Do you live here in Texas?
Yes, sir.
And how have you seen the rise of Islam here in Texas?
For decades, I've been watching it.
Oh, we got a pig squealing.
There we go. God bless America. Appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, we've seen the Islamification of not just Texas, but especially Collin County. But as you know, it's sweeping the nation. We're not for it. We're not going to stand for it. We're not going to be bullied. Well, we know that if you follow the Bible closer, you become a more kind, gentler person. You become a better person. Now, sure, we all can backslide and fall short of the glory of God, but the closer you follow the Bible, the better of a person you're going to be. Now, the closer you follow Islam, the more violent you are required to be. The more vile of a human is what you embrace, and we're here to stop that.
And when they talk about like Islam,
yeah, started off strong. Started to call out at least that there's a conversation to be had. Really wish that it hadn't dipped off into that one religion is violent, the religion of the Crusades, the religion of the Holocaust, fight me, the religion of the Inquisition, the religion of the doctrine of discovery, that we still don't know how many indigenous people of these continents were murdered in a mass genocide of a size and scope we have no accounting for. And then say, but no, there's you become, the more closely you aligned you become to their religion, you become vile and evil and violent. Even were that to be true, and I have plenty of, believe you me, in my toxic atheist heart, in the back pocket here, I have plenty of criticism about the Quran, about the Hadiths, about Muhammad, that I just is not benefiting this conversation, number one. Number two, these people that they're talking about, that he's talking about, are standing right behind him. And I give Nick Shirley the credit he deserves for pointing out, for going across and actually trying to give those people a voice too. Observe. These gentlemen that he's about to interview are Muslims.
Growing here in Texas. Why do you think Islam is growing here so much?
Oh, that's it. That's who?
How are you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm his father.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. What you asking him?
We're just asking why does he believe Islam is growing so much here in Texas?
Because we are loving people. We love you. We don't judge you because of the color of your skin or color of your eyes. We don't judge you because of what you believe in. You treat me good, I treat you good. That's
Amen.
it.
And what do you think about them coming out here with like the pigs and everything like that? Do you think that's...
They can come up with the pigs. They can burn the Quran. There are more than 300 million Muslims in America or in the world. They know Quran letter to letter, word to word in their hearts. Okay? He is expressing his First Amendment right, freedom of expression, that's fine. But that expose himself. What is the population of Plano? How many people he gathered? 10 people, 15 people? That's people from Epic on the other side. That's what he gathered, the people, and that's majority media. Don't turn it off. That's majority media. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's no place for people who spread hate in America. I've been in America for 30 years, mister. Okay, I see loving people, caring people, people they feed, people they help, you know. Otherwise, if they were hating people, there was nobody would be here. Americans are loving people. That's why America is great. America was great. America is great. And he is exposing himself. He's a paid agent who's getting paid to put up a show. He's spreading hate. Is he believing in Jesus? Jesus did not spread hate. Love your neighbors. Love people. That's what, I'm a more Christian than him.
What do you think?
I'm more Christian than him, he says. Okay, lots of things there that gentleman said that I disagree with. Don't think are fair to say. At the same time, once again, it's about what's left on the table. It's about, it's less about what you say and than it is about what you don't say. And what I didn't hear was any rhetoric like the woman that we saw at the beginning of our episode today saying, I'm willing to take up arms to enforce my point of view. It's not the word she uses, the exact word she uses, but that was the energy, that was the implication she gave. There was no call. There was specifically a call against violence. There was specifically a criticism about the motivations of anybody who would say that, to be American is to be hateful, that it's wrong. Okay. I'm American. Many of you are American. Is it inaccurate to say that Americans are hateful people? I know enough of my fellow Americans to know better. I know myself better. But what this man was saying, was communicating, was the ideal and the standard to which he hoped to hold himself and for us each to hold ourselves. For us as people to say we are striving to become better. He didn't say it that way, but that's okay. I like this energy, and I like that Nick covered it, and I'm trying to be fair here. I thought this interview with this gentleman was also this gentleman who is dressed like a cowboy, interesting cowboy, but is also a Muslim, I thought was also very good.
About the Islamification, or what people are saying is the Islamification of
I
Texas
think
here.
that they're paid agitators to distract, just like Antifa was used on the left to create chaos and division in America, so we don't focus on the real problems like Epstein, like the corruption in government. We've invaded countries on false pretenses like Iraq, where there's been over 1 million people that lost their lives. My family served in Iraq 2 tours during the Battle of Fallujah. I was underneath the World Trade Center the day it was hit. I am a Caucasian, white, proud Muslim American. These people are not the representation of Christianity.
Yep. So that was all I had time to have prepared for you guys today. I want to thank all of you who managed to stay 2.5 hours with me and in talking about this. And I just want to close with this appeal. I've said some pretty hard things here. I'm not Nick Shirley. Let me close that down. I said some pretty hard things here, but I feel like I was fair as I could be. And I feel like it was time, it was necessary in this conversation to illuminate that privilege creates white supremacy and extremist rhetoric, and people of all stripes, of all political backgrounds, people of all racial and ethnic backgrounds, people of all religious backgrounds need to be aware of it. But particularly people who have been privileged, as I have been, need to be aware of how our privilege leaves on the table words that are unsaid out of our mouths. And we also need to check and see. It's easy to say, but I don't believe that because I believe this over here. I'll tell you, if you want a really good rabbit hole to go down to check your own bias and to check white privilege, to be quite blunt with you, you look up how color blindness, not the condition, not the medical condition, but how color blindness is not the opposite of racism. That so many people have lobbed onto this statement by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that said that, in his famous I Have a Dream speech, that he hoped one day that his son, who talks about this frequently, by the way, Martin Luther King III, that he hoped one day that his son would be judged by the content of his character and not the color of his skin. Dr. King would very much lament to see how that became the standard for what became passable to so many people as the dividing line between what is racist or not racist. That so many people will say, I don't see color, or will say this has nothing to do with color, and think that that is a disclaimer that excuses saying some pretty racist things or even believing them. I know I have had to check my white privilege, and I consider myself a progressive person. I know that that there are some people who will say this woke ideology that I believe in and embrace makes me some kind of radical. But what I'm saying here is, if you don't want people to associate what you believe with white supremacy, then check to make sure you don't believe something that is endorsing white supremacy, and check to see and check for your privilege, which is to say, it may feel unfair that you, by virtue of the color of your skin or the culture that you come from, the religion that you come from, the country that you come from, to say that you have to be responsible how other people feel. I hear you. If that's what you feel, if that immediately calls you out and makes you feel like that's unfair, why should I have to be responsible? Why should I have to walk on eggshells? Because those people have been marginalized and hurt. And if we care about other people, and I think you brethren of the Latter-day Saints do in your hearts care about other people, then it's good for us to remind ourselves that we must check ourselves before we wreck ourselves on the subject of race and privilege. If we don't do it, how will we ever know How will we ever know that anybody is wrong when they say that you are an Islamophobe? How will you know if somebody accuses you of doing or saying something racist? How will you know if you are not willing to check? If you're not willing to take a moment to step back and look inside and say, how is this person's experience different from mine? How is their community's experience different from mine? And before you defend yourself and say, listen, I have XX number of friends who are, or listen, I have never in my life said such and such word, or I have never in my life espoused this or this or this. In my religion, we believe this or this or that. Stop. I would suggest stop and listen and hear what that person has said, and to take responsibility for the harm done to that community was something even as simple as, I can't make up for what was said or what was done to you and your people. I want you to know that I heard you today, and you've maybe not that word. You have made me aware. Today, you've given me something to think about, or I hear you, and I didn't realize that before. To be vulnerable and realize how privilege has shaped who you are and how you look at the world can only make you a better person, can only make us a more peaceful and beautiful world where life is worth living. It is my mandate as first herald of the Church of Korihor to try and strive for that world. Yes, I gave myself this mandate. That's my favorite thing about it. And I believe that we can do better. And if you feel I was unfair, I invite you to approach me in any way that seems fit to you. Amen. Woo! That one got hot. Let's have something fun to end up with today. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, we love to celebrate as a community with our godless hymns. We did a lot of Bestow recently. I think maybe it would be good. Yeah. One that's fun and that celebrates, one that celebrates the beauty of diversity in our world and the end of fascism, or at least as it would seem at one point, something that we can all celebrate together. And that's the legacy of Jesse Owens, one of my favorite hymns, godless hymns of the Church of Korihor. Remember, we have one chance. No sermon tomorrow, my friends. I'll see you on Friday for Giving Friday.
This is my one chance to prove Hitler wrong. Jesse Owens, one chance. I knew all along, this one chance to make them see. I have one chance to prove it to me. Raised in Ohio, the Klan couldn't break me. The Buckeye bullets, golden opportunity. Now I'll reach for that goal, take my race to Berlin, rock this old world with the heart to win. It's my one chance to prove Hitler wrong. Jesse Owens, one chance. I knew all along, this one chance to make them see. I have one chance to prove it to me. Swift up, swift down, this bullet will fly. The world will see Jesse's reason why we live and we die. My only race to win is Jesse Owens' heat. This is the bullet's race within. This is my one chance to prove Hitler wrong. Jesse Owens, one chance. I knew all along, this one chance to make them see. I have one chance to prove it to to me. 4 golds later, he made it clear how he felt. Didn't shake my hand, no but Roosevelt. Now I am gone, brothers all, our race goes on. This is your one chance to prove Hitler wrong. This is our chance, this is our song. Take your one chance to make them see. Take this one chance.